Okay, so a very informative day so far. Some presentations were far more confusing to me than others, but generally really informative. So we have the opportunity now, and particularly our overseas guest as well, who's got tremendous amount of knowledge from other countries. We have the opportunity to ask questions. There is a mic on your desk in front of you, so if you can just put up your hand, and then you may proceed with the question. If you can just tell us to which of the presenters your question is aimed. If there are no questions, that will be extremely disappointing. Okay. Well, let's start from the bottom here. Lisa, you want to start on your side?
We're recording.
Yeah, use the mic for recording, please.
Hey, I don't need to project my voice so much anymore. Great. So I have a question for, is it Andre? Mr. Rizzi, because I can't remember if it was, I'm getting confused with Andre, which is the South African version. So if we look at the two African countries, it's Nigeria and South Africa, correct, that have adopted rhizobium. And then we go and look at which countries in Africa are planting soybean, and that's like sub-Saharan Africa mostly. What do you think the long-term implication is of not adopting rhizobia? Maybe it's actually for anyone can answer this, but I think that's something that as Africans we should be looking at. And what is the perception of smallholder producers to adopting rhizobia?
Maybe you no, because he knows more the market here.
So, yeah, thanks for the question. I think there's been quite a bit of actual change in these smaller markets or smaller holder markets with a lot of different techniques. We've actually seen some great projects in South Africa specifically with down in KZN having a small market or small holders or smaller growers where we've actually put up a seed treatment unit, and it's a really basic seed treatment unit where we would actually have a person in the community or in the business, so he actually treats the seed for a price, and then the farmers actually come and collect the seed or deliver it to him, take back the treated seed, and it's working really, really nicely. And definitely in, like for argument's sake, like countries like Nigeria, probably one of the bigger producers, unfortunately they haven't really adopted rhizobium technology as much as we thought it could be, due to the fact that I think it's a very manual, let's say business with a lack of energy, and one of their biggest states that they produce most of their soybeans in actually doesn't have electricity supply. So it's a very difficult thing, as well as their harvesting and combining is still by hand. So it's an interesting question. I do think that countries like, for argument's sake, Zambia have really adapted well. There's more commercial side, but also on small scale side. We definitely deal with some cooperatives that do that small scale treatment. But yes, I think I agree that we need to look at this more seriously and really understand the benefits of what nitrogen fixation can do. Some little project, maybe not on soybeans, but was definitely on peanuts, which was done in Malawi. And there was significant yield responses, and so there are different countries we can do this in. I think the regulatory side of Africa is being quite difficult. Understanding the local regulations versus an entry to those markets. Generally, they have a university in a country which will block your registration as far as an international developer or a manufacturer from a single source.
Thanks, Jonathan. Next question. Back there.
Thank you. My name is Francois Prinsloo. I'm from the Stoffberg region. We've got a heavy soil, lots of clay, and we've been doing no-till for 22 years now. 50-50 rotation between soybeans and maize. Do we still need to put down rhizobia? Because lots of guys will tell you after that amount of time, we see even the volunteer soybeans, after being sprayed 2,4-D and whatever, they still make the nodules. So the question is, do we still need to apply it? And then I've got a follow-up question with regarding to the seed treatment. In the market, we hear a lot about in-furrow treatment as opposite to seed treatment, which makes sense with now the addition of all the products, the byproducts. It's just too much mixture for the amount of seed. The seed becomes too wet when you try to do it on a seed treatment. Your take on that, please. Thank you.
Adriano, you want to give that a go? Thank you.
We recommend to apply all the years the inoculant, because that's common that you are talking, but all the same that explained before, the quality of the nodules are very correlated with the inoculant application. So if you for that is because why recommend use all the years again, even in these soils that have a long years of soybean history. Because if you don't, if you don't use any inoculant, you take a plant, you will see nodules, but you are not getting the maximize of the biological nitrogen fixation. It's common to see more nodules in the secondary roots than in the primary root. That is an indicator of the action of an inoculant, for example. So that's why we recommend inoculate every year.
Thank you. Dr. Hassan?
Okay. Okay, just to answer the question with regard to whether you need to inoculate or not, also depends on whether the soil contains sufficient bacteria or competitive established rhizobium, which are unique to the legume. So it's not possible to say yes, you have to inoculate or not, because we have to do some kind of survey. So the survey is that is the soil does it contain too much amount of nitrogen? So if it contains soil nitrogen, it might, even if you inoculate, it might inhibit the nodulation. But the fact of the matter is that if it contains already established bacteria or rhizobium, it doesn't matter whether you inoculate or not, because you will not find any response to the inoculation. So we have to make a survey. Does the soil contain the specific bacteria or rhizobium unique to that legume or not? So if it contains a lot of, quite a high concentration of the bradyrhizobium, then you don't need to inoculate. And how long has that land or soil has been planted with the soybean? Has it been abandoned and all that? So we need to take this into consideration before we can say that yes, you have to inoculate. Sometimes there is no need to inoculate if there is sufficient established amount of bacteria in the soil.
Sorry, Dr. Hassan, can I ask then, is it worth taking the risk whether you know it's working or not working? Why would you take a risk?
Well, you mentioned that many farmers, in order to avoid the risk, they inoculate, whether it is necessary or not. But the fact of the matter is that if the soil contains already established rhizobium, even if you inoculate, then you will not get, you can compare the uninoculated control and the inoculated control. You don't find any difference. Why is that? Is it because the bacteria is not active? No. The bacteria is very effective, efficient, but there are already competitive bacteria in the soil. So even if you inoculate, then you will not get a response. So it's good to make a survey as to how or what does that soil contain in terms of the actual or the specific bradyrhizobium or rhizobia that are unique to nodulates that. As you said, many farmers, they inoculate, even if it is necessary or not, just to avoid the risk. But sometimes it's a waste of money, because you buy the inoculant product and you inoculate it and you don't get any response. So you have to first know what your soil look like.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if we should encourage only inoculate after you've tested your soil, but that's fair enough. Jonathan, yeah. Won't you switch off the mic when you finish speaking, if you don't mind? Thank you. Apparently they can't all work at the same time.
So, yeah, I think it's a really interesting debate, and I do agree with you. Definitely there's natural rhizobium in the soil, but from data and literature that we've been able to see from various parts of the world, our CFU count of our soil or our microbial population is really low compared to other parts of the world. There was a study done in Embrapa and also with the guys in Argentina. I forget the exact organization, but the CFU count of the bradyrhizobium count in the soil was 2 times 10 to the power of 8, which is higher than some of the products that have been manufactured in the world. And still in that case, they got a yield response. It wasn't a massive compared to an untreated let's say first-time soybean yield with, let's say, potentially between, let's say, 800, or depending on the area, but let's work on a rough estimation of between 800 and 1.2 tons, or even up higher than that, depending on the region. We still got a good significant increase in yield from that data. So, but I do agree, natural flora and natural microbial activity could be definitely there. But from long-term studies, this was done over many, many years between Brazil and Argentina, which proved that even with high concentrations of bradyrhizobium, there was still an impact with soybean inoculant.
Further questions over here? Thank you.
Can I maybe just add to...
Terry, go ahead, please. We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you for really interesting talks. I think my question's probably for Dr. Hendricks or Mr. Etherington. So I'm a plant biologist, and I'm really interested in the nodule formation side of things, and the differences in nodule fixation for primary and secondary roots, or the differences between cultivars. Has anyone looked at how plant phytohormones play a role in the nodule formation, and how the differences between those tissues might change how nodules are formed?
Can you hear me? Sorry. I don't have any experience with the hormones and nodule formation, so I don't know if someone else maybe has experience with that. I think for us that was actually the first time we really investigated it, so it was a total surprise, and I think there's a lot of factors involved, and possibly also phytohormones, but we haven't investigated it.
Sorry, thank you for that question. It's really, yeah, I think that work that you did, Renal, yeah, fantastic, and it's definitely been shown around the world from a 00 soybean that we plant up in Minnesota, up in the northern part of, or in Canada, down to a high grouping. There's definitely different chemicals production on the seed, and there's been quite a variation of research done on that around the world. Definitely having strains that are more, let's say, inoculants or production of or strains that are more effective on different varieties. But the main thing is, or the main research or conclusion that we came out with about 3 to 4 years ago was actually the chemical components that are produced by the seed, depending on the and the actual compatibility of the inoculant, the Bradyrhizobium, to that seed variety. So there is also definitely a lot of work done in the node factor or the knot factor generation within a formulation, and there was a huge amount of response. So you definitely get that typical auxin production increase. So there is some data on that, but I don't believe that there's a direct link, or no one has proven that I've read or found in articles. So it would be a very interesting, let's say, trial or protocol to set up and actually investigate. Definitely.
Thanks, Jonathan. Further questions? Dr. Dreyer?
Yeah, I'm just asking the question. You know, it seems to me that we are heading for more than one strain of Rhizobium. Are we heading that direction, or are we going to stick with WB74?
Thank you for that question. It's quite a tough question. I think there's definitely going to be multiple strains available for Bradyrhizobium. WB74 is definitely a South African strain that has been originally from, let's say, it's been our foundation of soybeans for our strain development. But definitely in the world there are great strains out of Brazil. There are really good strains out of Mexico. There's really good strains out of variation of countries. I mean, probably the most studied strain in the world is the USDA 110. And then there's a secondary strain as well. So several companies have looked at dual strains, and there's variation on scientific data on that. But definitely there will be multiple strains, not per cultivar, but as a general in a product formulation. As far as Bradyrhizobium, you could choose, let's say for argument's sake, a SEMA 5081 or a USDA 110 or a WB74, and depending on your formulation, your manufacturing method, as well as your concentration and stability of the product through a lot of QC work and development work, I do think that you'll get fairly good results in all three strains, depending on your quality of your formulation and your integrity of your product.
Dr. Hendricks?
I think what I would like to add to that is it would have been very nice for us to know from that trial what strains occupied those nodules. So we're WB74 in most of the cases. So I really think we need more information on the specific strains' abilities to nodulate and occupy the nodules of different cultivars. And that will give us the answers. At this stage, I mean, we see all these differences, but we don't know, is it the same strain? And Amit and I have talked about nodule occupancy and how we can test for that. But that's really something that's going to add a lot of value, maybe answering some of these questions.
Okay. Actually, there is no rule or regulations that one must stick to a certain strain, or maybe WB74 forever, because if you go back in time to the release of these Bradyrhizobium strains in South Africa, in the 1960s, the first strain released was WB66, which is also an exotic strain. Then that one lasted only 4 years because there was more competition by another strain, WB61. And that one also lasted a few years, and more competitive strain was there, WB1. Then again, WB1 has to be replaced by WB74. So the saga continues, because as long as there is a more competitive and persistent strain, then it's a matter of selection, so strain selection. So currently, at the moment, we are, for instance, doing a strain selection for drought-tolerant strain, even including WB74 as maybe a positive control. And if it turns out that we get a more competitive and effective strain, there is no reason that WB74 might not be replaced by a new strain. So there is no such a rule that we have to stick to this, but so long as the newly introduced strain is tested in South Africa in 2 or 3 different geographical locations, and the data accompanying that are presented, then it's possible to introduce new strains.
Thank you. A quick question from my side. We come across in Brazil that they were using 2 strains at the same time. Does that make any sense? Is there no competition between the 2 strains? Maybe Adriano, you have some answer?
What's the question?
Have you come across that practice? 2 strains at the same time in the same product?
Yes, as Rizobacter, in Brazil we only use 1 strain, and we have some trials with the combination of the strains, but we don't have any results. We are more focused in the formulation. We use the Japonicum in Brazil, SPP, and also we proved the combination with Elcani, and we don't have any result. And we now are trying to use another kind of formulations, more concentrated, but no with an association with the strain. So we don't have a lot of experience mixing strains.
Thank you. Lucas?
Maybe I want to put Anthony Jarvie on the spot here in terms of cultivar evaluation and the use of a strain. Do you use the same strain then, or do you use multiple strains? Because I think in the past, you know, the whole national cultivar evaluation program has been focused around a specific strain. And then maybe just another follow-up. In terms of what Ronel found with their research work, those cultivars that was tested and showed the differences between R1 and R5, are all those determinate or indeterminate cultivars? Does that play a difference?
Many questions, right? We're in the business of testing cultivars, not testing Rhizobia. So what we've done is we test everything on the same strain.
Sorry, we're struggling to hear. If you can speak up a little bit, please.
All right. How's that?
Thank you.
So we test all our cultivars on the same strain, and that is really just because if you have a look at the combination of strains and cultivars, that number gets really big very quickly. So historically, everything's been done on WB74. And there was another question.
It was more about the cultivars that Ronel tested. Would you expect a difference between determinate and indeterminate?
Okay. So just looking back, those were all indeterminate cultivars that were in Ronel's trial. But I don't believe that there's a difference between determinate and indeterminate in terms of their ability to nodulate, right? So it might have influenced the yield results, but probably not the nodule count.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, on the variation or multiple strain side again, generally, that's if we had to take the best strain of Brady Rhizobium, which is best suited for our environment as well as for the varieties that we would plant. If we had to duplicate that or use a multiple strain, for argument's sake, like a cold climate Brady Rhizobium and a very warm climate Brady Rhizobium, you'll have 50% of your concentration of the strain that you're actually looking for. So the problem is now we've diluted that product by 50%. So it is really important to select your strain correctly so that you can have the best quality product that's not going to give you the highest concentration. So up until now, multiple strains generally have got or haven't found traction in the markets globally.
Yeah, just for a bit of sort of background, the multiple strain recommendation came from Embrapa in Brazil, so I was quite surprised as well. Okay, a question over there.
Okay, thank you. I'm Tanda Zomlalazi. My question is to Jonathan. The first one, I'm not a biologist. I just want to find out, you showed the different positioning of the nodules. The primary being the ones that are more effective. Are there any practices that you use to have more of those, like placement or timing of the application? And then the second question is on the contributions of N. You showed, if I got you right there, you showed the contribution of about 180 for soybean. That's a bit stiff because it's almost 400 of urea, 400 kgs of urea, about 642 of LAN.
Just on that second question, could you just, please repeat that.
You showed a slide where you had different crops and strains, the contributions to the N of about 180 soybean, which is a lot.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the question. So when we did our evaluation on specifically fields that had no nitrogen or soybeans planted before, we would use sandy soils as best as possible or even high clay soils. And then we would apply 200 kgs of nitrogen in 2 applications of pure N. So that would work out to about 460 kilograms or 400 odd kilograms of, or 450 plus kilograms of urea, or around about, I believe it's 720 kilograms of LAN. The exact maths, I can do that when we're sitting, but yeah, it's around about that figure. And the Brady Rhizobium will be able to give you that same amount of nitrogen for your crop. If asking on your first question, how do we get more primary nodules versus secondary nodules, the best thing is to get a close contact of your Brady Rhizobium treatment to the seed, as well as then planting depth play quite a fairly or big role, as well as then obviously moisture at planting. Those are probably the 3 main sides of let's say primary nodules, and especially if you're going. Sorry, there was a gentleman from Storfberg asking about in-furrow versus seed treatment. So there's no significant differences between the two. Generally with in-furrow application you'll get more secondary nodules than primary nodules, depending on your target application of your in-furrow application.
Sorry, so the N was just over 1 season? Was it over 1 season?
Yes, in 2 applications. So planting with nitrogen, at V form, and then at R1 stage we would apply the nitrogen. And we've actually had to, in some cases, trying to separate the nitrogen filtration between the different blocks of soybeans. We had to be quite creative in some of the trial work where we actually had to almost utilize like IBR to stop the infiltration of nitrogen from one block to the next. So there was quite an interesting study.
I think last 2 questions and then we can find ourselves at lunch. Corné?
Thank you. Maybe just a question to some of the panel members. Some of the independent ones can also try to answer. In the west, we expect lots of farmers to plant soybeans for the first time on virgin soils, sandy soils. My question is, do you suggest that they apply or inoculate double or only once? So, for example, on the seed in the furrow, like a duplicate.
Johanna, you want to give it up?
Okay, thank you for the question. For example, in Brazil, it's a common practice, use double doses in the seed, but with the high concentration that we are working now with the new technologies that we are applying in our inoculants, don't have sense to put twice a very high inoculant because you are not increasing in a potential way using the double of the doses of the inoculant. So it's more important use an inoculant, the inoculant with the best concentration, and also you can use the technology of I present and also present with the bioinduction technology that will help you to create more quickly these connections with the rhizobia and the plant. And with that and with a high concentration, it's not necessary use double doses. I'm talking inoculants on the seed. In furrow, I really don't have experience.
So it's like many other things in life, it's quality instead of quantity, is it? Any further questions? Ralph? Sorry, yeah, sure.
Sorry, but also just on the Western Free State, Northwest, I think the planting conditions can be quite extreme. So with the high sandy soils, temperatures, there are a lot of factors that we could play a role, and we've definitely seen that a double inoculation in those regions, especially on first year planting, even with high concentration, is still making quite a significant jump. And it's not something that I do agree with Andreas, is from a high concentration point of view, from a perfect planting condition, 100% you would not need to double inoculate if you did a seed treatment. But I do think that there are conditions and situations out there that I would make that recommendation in the West quite comfortably. In the eastern region, again, Bloemfontein, Johannesburg, N1 and East, there I would definitely be looking at the single nodulation, except for very sandy soils, which have high temperature concerns. And that's one reason why a person or a grower or a consultant would recommend in-furrow application as well, is to protect the bacteria as best as possible in a high temperature or a low clay soil.
Thanks, Jonathan. That makes sense.
Also, in some of these situations, farmers use a solid inoculant with 2 doses of liquid inoculant, and really generate a very hard to work seed. I think that it's more have a psychological effect than because they are thinking that they will be more efficient, but in the practice it's really hard to work with this kind of seeds because they have a lot of product in the tegument.
I can maybe just add, what we've seen from trials in the West is if we split the inoculant, that half of the dose goes onto the seed and the rest in furrow. And we were talking about why this happens, but it seems like maybe the water that you put down with the inoculant in furrow give you better survival and higher numbers. But we've definitely seen that as a strategy on virgin soil is a good strategy to get good nodulation.
Yes, for example, we know that maybe the infrared application will be the best one because we have really good results, and you can put more concentration or more rhizobia, but I think that it's because you need a specific equipment, and also you need more products. So I think that it's not common because it's an expensive culture. So, but technically maybe it's best, but for an economy. For an economy preference, we use these applications on seed.
Thank you. Rolf, sorry, you were busy. Okay, let's take you first. All right, then we'll come back to you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. I think we just, Brigitte Stein, UPL, formerly Stimuplant, formerly whatever. I think we should just be careful of falling into the trap of more is better. We are not talking about chemicals. We are talking about living organisms. In chemistry, more may be better, but not in biology. There is something like overstimulating something. Jonathan in his talk alluded to higher concentration gives you more nodules around the crown. Dr. Hendricks showed us those beautiful tables where the one with no nodulation actually gave you higher yield. So it seems as if we're chasing after higher concentration inoculant, more nodules, but more nodules is very energy tapping on the plant. That is why I'm sure there was fertilizer in that experiment that you did. So the more nodules, the more the tax is on the plant. So more isn't always better. And when we start inducing plants in a technology way, we're trying to override the natural controls that's there in life. So we must just be very careful. That's just a comment. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
No, thank you for that input. Much appreciated. Makes a lot of sense. Sorry, Alf, you were before?
No, thank you, Chair. Just a question to the panel. The National Cultivar Trial, if we had to expand it to include the different strains, would it make sense? I know Dr. Jarvie referred to the combinations of Ligio, but if it's worth it, and that there's definitely a relationship or a combination that might make a big difference, then the industry can, I think, definitely look at something like that. But I think we probably need to start on a small scale and see if it's possible to, or if there is a correlation of maybe taking a few strains. I don't know, Dr. Hendricks, if you've got, you did that one trial. I don't know if I missed it, but was there also a correlation between the strains and the cultivars? I know you showed the different cultivars. Sorry, I'm a farmer. Maybe I missed something. Your researchers normally speak quick. Farmers are slow to grasp.
No, that's what I said afterwards. It would have been really nice to know the nodule occupancy of the strains, because we've inoculated with 4 strains. And, it was almost impossible to think that the one with a big, large nodule could be the number one in that trial, but maybe it was a really productive strain occupying that nodule in combination with the specific genetics of that cultivar. So obviously I have a big interest in that because it's very fascinating, but I think there's definitely value in investigating this more. I think the best value will come from if we are able to determine also the strain occupancy of the nodules, not just doing the nodulation patterns on the cultivar, but knowing, which cultivars prefers actually which strains.
Okay, yeah, that's actually where I missed it. So you inoculated all the vast with all the strains and not individually. Okay, thank you.
Ralph, I think your suggestion of doing the work separate to cultivar trials of the correlation between cultivars and strains is a good suggestion. Good. I think we really are already half an hour over time, so it's going to be a very rushed lunch. But please try and be back as close as possible to 1:30. We can probably run a few minutes late. Sorry, one last question here quickly.
Morning all. I'm a farmer in the northwest. I just quickly want to ask you, the panel, three quick questions. Maybe Dr. Hendricks can answer that, maybe on the test that you've run. Nematode alvarum in Afrikaans, my English is not so good. Products like vellum, did you use it? Are there significance? Is the cost worth using products like that? And also plant population. There's a lot of discussions. Some farmers planting 300,000, some farmers 250, some more, some less. Are there a significant yield increase in plant population and also the use of vellum or any products for alvarum? Thanks.
I think if you look at how rhizobium infect through the root hairs, it's very important to, if you have a nematode problem, and I mean nematodes eat the youngest roots, so that will definitely have a negative effect on nodulation if you have nematodes. So I mean any product that has an effect on nematodes and stimulating root hair development will have a positive effect on nodulation. I don't think I'm the right person to comment on cultivar, the plant populations. I don't know if there's someone else that can maybe.
There's a lot of work being done on that, so there are quite a few people in the audience who will be able to give you good information on that. Good. Thank you. We'll see you just now.